Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today there's two news stories that I think need to be talked about more. I mean, these are pretty important. These are like global events, and honestly, like I've seen them, here and there on like Twitter and stuff like that, but I think that they need a lot more recognition, and I think a lot more people need to know about them, because this is stuff that has implications not only just for like the United States or like one country or whatever, but honestly for like the entire planet. I mean, with like Putin in office and stuff like that, that kind of determines a lot of political relations around the world and things like that. So with all that being said though, I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. But before I do, I want to say I've noticed that 50% of people watching my videos recently have not been subscribed to the channel, but most of you are watching about 5 or so of my videos. So why don't you go ahead and hit subscribe? You can get updated, of course, with notifications on about every time that I upload, and I'm putting out a lot of content recently, so there's a lot of stuff for you to be entertained by. With that being said, if you do enjoy, make sure to leave a like and maybe share it with a friend. And with that being said, I guess, let's go ahead and jump into the video. So the first story that I want to talk about here, and I think that this is probably like extremely important. I know a lot of you live in the United States and you know that we kind of have pretty cold relations with Russia and stuff like that, and Putin plays a lot into that, if we're being honest. Vladimir Putin, who is the leader of Russia, I don't know, he's one of those guys that, like, I guess the United States just doesn't get along with, and it's had some bad effects, I guess, on our relationship with Russia. It's not like we've really historically had a great relationship with them anyway, but Putin has essentially become a dictator in a lot of ways, and I think, of course, this is something that people need to know about. Of course, there's been a lot of coverage and stuff about what Putin has done in Russia and stuff like that. A lot of the opposition to him politically have, had mysterious circumstances where they drop out of the race and things like that, right? But this is pretty big news. So, the Kremlin hailed a triumphant vote of confidence in President Putin, the overwhelming approval by voters of his bid to extend his 2-decade-long rule potentially to 2036. Such high levels of turnout and such support would have been hard to forecast, spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters in a conference call. Vladimir Putin, in his first public comments on the vote, said Russia remains, quote, very vulnerable given the relatively short period of time since the 1991 Soviet collapse. We need internal stability and time to strengthen the country and all of its institutions. So I thank everyone who supported the amendments, he said in televised remarks. In voting that concluded Wednesday, 78% of Russians backed the package of amendments, with a turnout of 65% according to the Central Election Commission. Independent vote monitors claimed widespread manipulation and pressure on voters, but officials denied any significant violations. Amid rising public discontent about stagnant living standards, the Kremlin pulled out all of the stops to ensure a high turnout and resounding approval in balloting that started last week. Authorities wooed Russians with populist sweeteners such as effective constitutional bans on gay marriage, along with prize drawings for voters, while playing down the removal of term limits for Putin and blocking any campaigning against a yes vote. Now this is important because, it basically allows him to stay in rule almost until 2040. It's 2020 now, he's already been in there for a few decades. Just think about that fact. I mean, this guy might be running this country through like 4 decades, and he's doing things like banning gay marriage, and once again, like political oppositions, they don't like to be around because of Putin. He's a strong-arming guy who creates, honestly, a lot of tension around the planet, and he might be here pretty much until I'm a middle-aged adult. That's insane to think about, and it's something that people need to pay attention to, because this kind of move is going to define, along with other things, of course, how the United States and the West interacts with Russia and its allies. Because, once again, it's already been kind of a cold situation. We don't really get along with the Russians. It's how it's been basically since the end of World War II and whatnot. But this is going to be huge because, here in the United States, like, we're so used to the fact that, like, a president can only stay in office for 8 years max, and most of the time they really only stay in for 4 because they never get reelected. But this guy might be running this country for 4 decades. Like, it's crazy to think that somebody can be in there that long, they can influence anything that they want, basically, on their own side of everything, because he basically has control over everything. The whole government is basically his to do whatever he wants with, because, they agree with him and whatnot, because they don't want to disappear. It's just crazy to think that, and it's going to be important now. Putin, a former KGB colonel who was first elected in 2000, is already the longest-serving Russian leader since Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. The plan would give him the right to run for 2 more 6-year terms after his current mandate runs out in 2024. While insisting he hasn't decided if he'll run again, Putin said last month that speculation over a potential successor would be destabilizing. Now, you also have to think that this entire thing was most likely tampered with by the Russian government. They like to say, they got to vote for it and there was overwhelming support. But when independent people are coming out and saying, hey, there was a lot of tampering going on with this voting, like it's very possible that in Russia, right, if the government decided, oh, dude, only like 30% of people voted for this, we can go ahead and kind of, stuff the ballots a little bit and make this go through. That kind of stuff really does happen in Russia. Like their voting and things like that is not even identical whatsoever to how it is like here in the West. The 67-year-old leader is confronting a slump in poll ratings as Russia's economy reels under the impact of the coronavirus epidemic and a collapse in oil prices. Once the referendum is out of the way, the Russian president will face the task of navigating through one of the deepest recessions in the time of his office. The referendum failed to pass only in the sparsely populated Arctic Nenets autonomous region, where the proposal got only 44% for and 56% against. The official result of 78% for the proposals came in higher than an exit poll conducted by state-run pollster Vitsium, I guess is how you pronounce that, which found that 71% of Russians had supported the plan. Officials said that the vote was a model of transparency and openness, but independent groups were definitely more critical. Now, another news story that I feel like people haven't either even heard of or even really understand the impact of is the new North American trade deal that just went under here. Most of you live in the United States or Canada, so NAFTA has been replaced. Now, NAFTA was the free trade agreement between, Mexico, the United States, Canada, and everything. And it's actually like a pretty significant pact, it's a pretty significant trade deal. But it's been replaced with the USMCA, which is the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. It went into effect yesterday, meaning that it's basically already law or whatever, and it's already going through, so this ended the threat that could potentially break apart all three countries having a free trade zone within one another. The USMCA is taking effect in the middle of brewing tensions, though, between the United States and Canada over a recent Trump administration threat to slap tariffs again on imports of Canadian aluminum. The US is pressing for Canada to impose quotas to slow the surge of its exports of the metal or face a 10% duty. Reimposing the tariffs, which were lifted in May of 2019, would likely prompt retaliation from Canada on US exports. Business leaders on Tuesday, in a clear message to Trump, urged the three countries to resist imposing tariffs, quote, and other barriers or measures that will undermine the objectives of the comprehensive trade agreement and weaken North American competitiveness. Also, some of the biggest points of contention are between the United States and Mexico. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, said last month that he already anticipates heated fights with Mexico on labor, biotechnology, intellectual property, and energy, which are already all strong issues of interest to lawmakers on Capitol Hill. The problems stem mainly from recent actions by the Mexican government and Congress that make it harder for American companies to send their exports and invest into Mexico. Mexico's Environment Ministry under President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has approved import permits for agricultural biotechnology products like GMOs. Mexican law allows for them to be sold, but the country has largely banned U.S. companies' access to the Mexican market since López Obrador took office in December of 2018. Lighthizer, speaking at a House Ways and Means hearing, said that he expects to use the USMCA to force Mexico to start approving U.S. exports of such farm goods. One of the biggest differences between NAFTA and the USMCA is stricter rules on how North American autos and auto parts qualify for reduced tariffs. Trump has long believed such a move will help bring back American jobs from abroad. The new rules, which aim to increase car production within the region, will require that automakers to make significant and costly changes to how they make their cars. Auto manufacturers are being given 3 to 7 years depending on the type of car to fully comply with the complicated new regulations. The U.S. International Trade Commission has estimated that the new provisions will lead to a net increase of 28,000 full U.S.-time jobs. Employment in the auto parts industry will rise, but slightly fewer Americans will be making finished vehicles because the added manufacturing costs will lead to higher prices, thus reducing consumer demand. So there's a lot of changes coming to this that are going to make trade between the United States, Canada, and Mexico a lot different. Now, obviously, these are pretty major markets, especially for all three of these countries, so this kind of deal is definitely pretty important. The only problem with this as of right now is that it's pretty unlikely that the economic impact here in the United States is just going to be super immediate, right? Like tomorrow, we're just going to be making trillions of dollars or something crazy just because this deal came through. That likely won't be the case due to a lot of the changes and stuff being made. It's pretty likely that if there is an economic payoff, which isn't even guaranteed, it could actually be years away. Trump has touted the USMCA as, quote, the best and most important trade deal ever made by the United States, but the deal is not expected to significantly increase trade within the region. Much of the framework for it comes from NAFTA, which already eliminated most tariffs between the three countries, but the USMCA will grow the US economy by $68.2 billion or 0.35% by the sixth year that it's in effect, according to the ITC. Still, many officials and trade experts say that the USMCA's biggest strength is that it's got the modernization chapters, which in part take stock of how the internet has changed since NAFTA began in 1994. The revised deal, for example, prohibits the three countries from slapping duties on digital products like movies, books, or streaming material, which is a win for tech companies like Netflix and Amazon. North American officials and economists agree that the USMCA going into effect is good news, as it takes away the years of uncertainty arising from Trump's threat to withdraw from NAFTA altogether. Obviously, this is important. It won't be like, 10% of the US economy or anything crazy, but it's definitely something that you should know about if you have any family or anything that lives and works in like the auto manufacturing and things like that. This is definitely big news. It'll hopefully be creating American jobs and benefiting all three countries in different ways to help all of their economies grow and to keep a free trade zone over the entire continent of North America. Now, with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. Thank you to my channel members. Your support helps my channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus telling you what's going on and signing out.